Alright, here's the video lesson for 1.3. Now this is a very important lesson because we have to be able to use our algebra rules to solve for a certain variable when there are more than one variables in an equation. We've done a lot of work with solving for one particular variable when it is the only variable in an equation, but now we're going to go to formulas. So a literal equation is a formula or equation that involves several variables. We want to solve them for certain letters. Now if you look at this closely, they tell you what they want you to solve for in each case. So we have to use algebra. Even though we don't have numbers, we want to solve for the letter, but using algebraic rules. So if we look closely, we see that it's b times h. So we have to undo multiplication by division. And since we want to solve for h, it means it means we want to get h by itself. So I'm going to divide by b. And when you do so, you move it. And h will be a over b. And that's considered finished. So over here on the next one, we have to solve for r. Again, the relationship between r and t is multiplication. And we need to know that relationship because we have to take away the t somehow. And if it's multiplication, we do division. So r, and then again that crosses out the t's, r would be distance divided by time. That's that equation. All right, let's take a look at a couple here, focusing on the next here. First two on top. What are we solving for? That's the first thing you want to do. This one's solving for r, this one's solving for m. Very important to know that first and foremost. We want to solve for r, so 2 and pi need to move. Well, they're all being multiplied. Now, since they're all being multiplied, I can do something in one step here. I can divide not just by 2, but by 2 pi. That will move both of them at once. And that will leave us with r equals circumference over 2 pi. Next one, we want to solve for m. Okay, well, now we have to undo a little bit again. We want to get m by itself. Well, that means we have to move this piece and the 4. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we said when we undo, we do addition and subtraction first, unless there's parentheses. So minus 3n, we would undo by adding 3n, which would give us 4m, this is now moved, equals 8 plus 3m. Now we go to the relationship of 4 and m, which is multiplication. So we would divide both sides by 4. Now pay close attention to the fact that I put all of the right side over 4. So we can write it as 8 plus 3m all over 4. Or we could actually split them up and say 8 over 4 plus 3 over 4 m. 8 over 4 is 2. And then the second part we can just leave. Oops, sorry. And that is considered finished. The next two, again, first and foremost, what are we solving for? K, and over here it's t. So we want to get k by itself. Well, we have to move the negative 2 or the minus 2 and the 5. So when we're undoing, we said subtraction and addition first. But when it's in a fraction form like this, these are actually bound together in the numerator. So I can't just add 2 right now. I would actually have to multiply both sides by 5 in order to get rid of it. So I get k minus 2 equals, now this is multiplication, it doesn't care about like terms, so 11 times 5, 55 j. Now we can go ahead and do our last step, which is add 2. So k is equal to 55j plus 2. All right, the next one, we have parentheses. Well, we want to solve for t. So I have a couple of things I could do. Well, we've been talking a lot about distributing, but that actually would make it more difficult here, because I'd have two different t's sitting around. I'd have tr, if I distribute, plus 4t. Now how do you solve for that? How do you solve for how do you solve for t when they're in two different places? So this is kind of a leading question for a couple lessons to come here. We like it this way, where we only have a t sitting there in parentheses, because we only have one variable to deal with then, one t variable. So we would actually look at the relationship and say, okay, it's t times the parentheses, so we would divide by whatever's in the parentheses. And that would leave us an equation to solve for t. Seems a bit counterintuitive, but we will do a lot more of that to come, so hopefully that'll sink in more. All right, now we're going to have some fractions. All right, so we take a look at this. Again, what are we solving for? We're solving for y. That's right here. Solving for q. That's inside the parentheses now, so that adds to the intrigue here. So notice that we want to get y by itself, so we have to take care of the x and the negative 2/3. So we're going to take care of the x first. Again, look to the left of the variable. It's nothing there, so it's assumed plus or positive. So we subtract x. So 12 minus x. Now we want to solve for y. So the question is, how do we take care of a negative 2/3? Well, we can do it in one step by multiplying both sides by a negative 3/2. Now, some would say, well, we're going to divide by whatever's there. Well, if you divide by negative 2/3, it's the same as multiplying by negative 3/2, the reciprocal. So here we would have a distribution question. And 12 times a negative, that's a negative here, and 12 times a negative 3/2 is going to give us negative 18, I believe. Yep, negative 18. Negative 3/2 times negative x is a positive 3/2 x. So I would take either one of those. I'm going to take a brief shortcut here real quick and look at one thing. You could take both sides times 3 and get negative 2y. Now if I take the right side times 3, I got to distribute. So you get 40, let's see, 36, sorry, minus 3x. And if you divide by negative 2, you're going to get the same thing you had before. 36 divided by negative 2 is negative 18. Negative 3x divided by negative 2 is a positive 3/2 x. So same thing if you wanted to look at it that way. All right, the last one here, we're trying to solve for q. Well, if we divide both sides by a, because it's being multiplied by the parentheses, again, q minus 8, they're stuck together with the parentheses, so we can't deal with the h yet, but we can deal with the a. And once I move it, now I can get rid of the parentheses. Add 8 to both sides. (23 over a plus 8). And that is acceptable. I'd take that. The only other option you could have, again, I'm kind of showing you some choices. You could distribute first if you wanted to. If you distributed the a, you'd get qa minus 8a equals 23. We're solving for q. Got to remember where that is. So here I could add 8a and get qa equals 23 plus 8a. Divide, we're solving for q now. Divide by a. Divide the whole thing by a. And this is compatible with this. It's just that they combined, they got a common denominator and put them together. So that is acceptable as well. Here ends lesson 1-3.